Welcome to the Narrative Nest, where stories unravel the mysteries of the human experience. What starts as a simple trip for ice cream turns into every parent's worst nightmare. This is the chilling tale of Maddie Carter's story of betrayal, secrets, and a mother's unbreakable hope. A sunny ride to the ice cream shop turned into the start of a nightmare. No ransom, no note, no trace until day 15, when the truth finally surfaced. It shattered more than just one family. In the quiet town of Walnut Ridge, the kind of place with a single grocery store and one blinking red light at Main and Cedar, the smallest things could still feel big. People didn't lock their doors. Strangers waved to each other. And when 13-year-old Maddie Carter rode off with her father on a warm Sunday afternoon, no one thought twice. Doug Carter had called earlier that morning. "Thought I'd swing by and take Maddie for ice cream," he said, his voice casual. Rachel recalled. Mattie was in the living room, flipping through her sketchpad. Rachel glanced over at her daughter, then back at the phone. "Okay," she said slowly. "Just bring her back by 6. Doug chuckled. "Of course, just ice cream." Rachel watched from the porch as Doug pulled up, not in his truck this time, but on his bike. He had a small 2-seater trailer rigged behind it, the kind kids sit in with their legs folded. Mattie smiled slightly as she stepped outside, holding her hair up while Rachel tied it for her. "I'll be back before dinner," Mattie said. Rachel helped her into the trailer, double-checked the straps, then stepped back as Doug mounted. "The bike, be careful," Rachel said. Doug nodded, lifting a hand in a half-wave. "Always." She watched them ride off down the sidewalk. Maddie glanced back just once, her face unreadable. Rachel wouldn't see her again for 15 days. By 6:30, Rachel had started pacing. By 7:15, she called Doug's phone. No answer. At 8:02, he finally called back. She said she was going to meet up with a friend, he said, his tone too calm. "Blonde girl," said she knew her from school. "I thought you knew." "I didn't," Rachel said, trying to stay composed. "You just let her go." Doug hesitated. She looked sure. "Said you'd be fine with it. You know how she is independent. She's 13, Doug." "I know," he muttered. "I thought she was just hanging out. She waved me off." Rachel didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Maddie hadn't returned. Rachel called every friend, every parent, every number in her phone. No one had seen her. No one knew about any plans. By noon, Rachel reported her daughter missing. The police responded quickly. Doug was questioned. His story was nearly identical to what he'd told Rachel. They rode to the ice cream shop near the old gas station on Jefferson Avenue. He bought her a vanilla cone. They sat outside on the bench. A girl passed by, blonde, same Ajand, Maddie. Apparently knew her. She got excited, Doug said. Said they'd planned to meet up. "I figured it was a friend she knew well." "Did you see them leave together?" the police asked. "No. She told me she'd meet her inside and that. I didn't need to wait. She waved me off." But there were no cameras inside that ice cream shop, and no one remembered seeing Maddie with anyone else that day. For the next several days, Rachel joined search teams. She stapled flyers to telephone poles, walked the banks of the creek that wrapped round the edge of town, and drove along the highway each night, just hoping. Doug joined too for the first few days. But by day 4, he stopped answering his phone. Rachel noticed the shift immediately. He seemed cold now, not panicked, just blank. Detectives visited him again, He claimed he was dealing with the stress privately. Rachel was not convinced. On day 7, a strange envelope appeared in there. Mailbox, no return address, no stamp. Inside was a receipt from the ice cream shop, time-stamped 3:12 p.m., the same day Maddie disappeared. Rachel hadn't been there. She turned it over to the police. They pulled any security footage they could, from nearby gas stations and corner stores. That's when they found it. Grainy footage from a hardware store across the street. It showed Doug arriving with Maddie on his bike. She stepped out of the trailer, rubbed her eyes. He held her wrist as they crossed the street to the ice cream stand. What struck detectives was her face. She wasn't smiling. She didn't look like she wanted to be there. They watched closely. Doug never seemed to let go of her. They stayed there for 6 minutes, then both walked toward the direction of the trailer park. That's where the footage cut out. Day 10 came and went. No new leads. Rachel was crumbling. Doug was absent. On day 14, he called Rachel and said he needed to run an errand, something about work papers he had to submit. "I'll be out most of the day," he said. Rachel didn't ask questions anymore. Her focus was on Maddie. And then came day 15. That night, just before sundown, Rachel's phone buzzed. A WhatsApp message from an unknown number. No profile photo, no words, just a video. She opened it with trembling fingers. At first, it was shaky, like someone filming from a distance. It focused slowly, revealing a white trailer sitting in a dusty, open lot. Maddie stood beside it, still, silent. Then Doug appeared. He put a hand on her back, guiding her into the trailer. He kept looking over his shoulder. 12 seconds, then black. Rachel dropped the phone and screamed. Everything she feared and more had just become real. Rachel couldn't stop staring at the screen. Even after the video ended, her eyes stayed fixed, frozen, like the image might move again, like maybe she missed something. Maddie, her baby, standing stiff outside a trailer, Doug behind her. But what did it mean? Her mind circled the same. 2 questions, again and again. Why hadn't Doug mentioned this? And where was Maddie now? When Detective Colin Mercer arrived at the house, he already knew something was wrong. Rachel's voice over the phone had been barely audible. Now she stood by the window in silence, clutching the phone like it might fall through her fingers. "I got a video," she whispered, "from a number I don't know." Mercer watched it once, then again. The second time, he didn't blink. Then he asked to take the phone. She handed it to him without looking. Outside, a patrol car idled. By the curb, Mercer stepped out to call it in. Inside, Rachel didn't move. Within the hour, the video was being reviewed by the digital forensics team. The number was unregistered, no name, no ID. The clip had been sent through a masked internet relay using Wi-Fi. No metadata, no geolocation. The file had been compressed, sent, and then erased from the sending device. It was clean and it was only 12 seconds long. Doug Carter did not return home that night. When police visited his residence, his car was gone. No sign of forced entry, no sign of struggle. Everything inside his apartment looked normal. A pair of shoes. By the door, a jacket draped over the chair, his toothbrush still damp. But the drawers were empty. His laptop was gone. His phone was gone. He was gone. That fact hit Rachel harder than anything else. He hadn't called, hadn't shown up, hadn't even tried to ask what was going on. Just vanished, like Maddie. Detectives tried not to jump to conclusions, but the timing of Doug's disappearance just hours after the video surfaced, was a problem. Still, they couldn't call him a suspect, not yet, not officially. They didn't have a crime scene. They didn't have a body. They didn't even have confirmation of a crime, just a missing girl, a strange video, and a father who now couldn't be found. The next day, Rachel was brought in again. She sat at the edge of the same grey metal chair, hands clasped tight, eyes dry from too much crying. "Do you recognize this place?" Mercer asked, pausing the video on the trailer. Rachel stared at it again. The dust, the dry weeds, the white siding, nothing looked familiar. "No," she said. "I've never seen it before." Mercer nodded. "Do you know why Doug might be there? Do you know if he has any connection to anyone who owns trailers?" "I don't know," she said again, and she didn't. Doug had been a father who came around when asked, who texted on birthdays, who gave Maddie the occasional gift card or comic book. He wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. But this, none of it made sense. Search teams canvassed every RV park, trailer yard, and scrap lot within 40 miles. They found nothing, no matching siding, no identical rust patterns, no surroundings that matched the dirt and brush in the video. They even used satellite overlays to match roof shapes. Nothing. Rachel stopped answering the door. She unplugged the house phone. The only people she let in were the detectives, and even then, only for short updates she could barely process. The hardest part wasn't just that Maddie was gone, it was not knowing how she was gone. What had really happened that afternoon? What did Doug mean when he said she went with a friend? Was there even a friend? Or had he panicked and made something up? The weight of not knowing settled into her chest like a stone. She went through Maddie's room over and over again, not to clean, just to touch the edges of her world. The pillows still smelled like her shampoo. Her sketch pad sat half open on. Her desk, the last drawing Maddie had started, was a treehouse, partly shaded with colored pencil. Rachel ran her thumb across the page, as if she could smooth the lines back into life. Meanwhile, the town had started to whisper. It had been 15 days. Some people believed Maddie had run away. Others blamed Doug. Others still whispered about trafficking, though no one dared say it out loud in front of Rachel. Then there were the cruel ones, the anonymous comments on news articles, the online rumors. She probably wanted to disappear. Teenagers are dramatic. Maybe the mum's hiding something. Rachel stopped reading anything after day 11. On day 16, a local news channel aired a short update. No new leads, no confirmed sightings. Detective Mercer declined to comment on whether the father's disappearance was connected to the case. That night, Rachel walked into Maddie's room, sat on the edge of her bed, and tried to imagine what she might be doing right now. Was she scared? Was she hurt? Or was she already gone? Rachel tried not to let that thought in, but it was starting to slip through the cracks. Police ran down every possible lead. They re-interviewed Doug's co-workers, his neighbors, anyone he might have contacted. They searched his laptop history from a cloud backup, but found nothing recent. They checked security footage from banks, toll booths, highways, still nothing. It was like both of them had fallen off the map. Rachel kept waking up in the middle of the night, sometimes because of a sound, other times because of silence, the kind of silence that screamed. She would get up, walk to the front porch, and just stare at the empty street. It was always too quiet, too still. By day 18, detectives started considering that maybe Doug had been taken to. It was far-fetched, but not impossible. The clean vanish, the precision of the message. The trailer, no confirmed location. The lack of any ransom demanded all pointed to something larger. But again, they had no proof, no evidence of abduction, no confirmation of a crime. 2 names, 1 girl, 1 man, gone. Rachel sat across from Mercer one final time that week. He looked more tired than she'd ever seen him. "We're doing everything we can," he said. "I know," Rachel replied, but her voice was hollow. "We're not giving up." She nodded, but in her eyes, something had already changed. Hopelessness, but something close to it. Outside, the air had turned colder. The leaves were starting to fall. Rachel stood by the porch railing, watching them drift down onto the lawn. She wondered if Maddie had felt the wind lately, if she could see the sky, if someone was holding her hand or hurting her, if she was afraid. She looked down the street, the place where Doug had once ridden away on a bike with her daughter. She didn't know if she'd ever see either of them again, but in her gut, something whispered that if she did, it wouldn't be the same. Not ever again. Day 19 arrived like the rest, quiet and stuck in place. But at the Walnut Ridge Police Department, the tone had shifted. The case wasn't going cold, but it wasn't burning either. Leads had stalled, tips dried up, and still no sign of Doug Cartano. Digital footprint, no verified sightings. But something had to give. Detective Colin Mercer knew that in missing persons cases, the 3rd week was critical, not because the odds got better, they didn't, but because that's when mistakes finally started showing, not from the victim, but from the person responsible. A small task force had been built behind closed doors. A team of former his partner, Jules Avery, digital forensic analyst Miguel Alvarez, and data analyst Serena Lynn, who joined from a county office with fresh eyes and no assumptions. Mercer briefed them hard on day 20. "No more waiting for tips," he said. "Let's rebuild the timeline, not from Rachel's memory, not from Doug's story, but from infrastructure. Let's follow what never lies: power, signal, shadows, and timestamps." They began from the last verified moment to 4:47 p.m. at the ice cream stand on Jefferson Avenue. Footage showed Doug and Maddie at the counter. Maddie held a cone in her left hand. Doug stood too close, not suspicious in itself, but not relaxed either. His body language leaned in. He watched Maddie more than the cashier. What stood out wasn't what happened in the footage, it was what didn't. They didn't sit down. They didn't linger. They didn't interact with anyone. They bought the ice cream, stepped out of frame, and were gone. Serena noticed something. Next, in a reflection in the metal napkin dispenser on the counter, barely visible, a stretch of curb appeared. Doug and Maddie passed it after exiting. "What's the building across the street?" she asked. "Auto repair," Miguel said. "Do they have cameras?" Mercer looked up. No one had asked. They called the shop owner that evening. He'd never been approached. Day 21. Detectives pulled the drive from the auto shop's outdated CCTV system. It didn't show much, but what it did show changed everything. At exactly 2:51 p.m., Doug and Maddie appeared on the edge of the frame, walking toward a side alley with no outlets. "Why would they go there?" Jules asked. No one answered. They scouted the alley on foot the next morning. Weeds poked through cracked asphalt. A chain-linked fence stretched across the end. A green electrical utility box sat half-buried beneath vines. Nothing looked disturbed, signs of struggle. But on the wall halfway down the alley, Serena spotted something odd. A round grey disc bolted near a roofline, not a security cam, a private Wi-Fi relay. It belonged to a company that leased rooftop signals to delivery services and contract vehicles that needed location mapping unregulated. Privately maintained, low-powered, short-dash range. Mercer got a warrant. They pulled the data for days 14 to 21. That's when they found the ping. At 2:52 p.m., a tablet connected to the private network for just 8 seconds. Just long enough to initiate an upload. No file was stored on the device, but the log showed an outgoing transfer to an anonymized cloud location. That could be when the video was sent. Miguel said, Serena added, to stay invisible. It didn't tell them who, but it told them something. The person who recorded that clip was closer than they thought. Rachel wasn't told any of this yet. She'd stopped attending every update. She stayed home mostly. Friends offered to visit, she said no. Church groups offered help, she declined. Nothing made sense to her now except isolation. And in that isolation, a new kind of fear had grown, one that went beyond worry. She no longer asked if Maddie would come home. She now asked herself, how many things did I miss? Every parenting decision, every ride she allowed, every trust she gave Doug to Italy, they ran like static in her head. The past was turning toxic. She stopped eating, lost weight. Her hands started to tremble from nothing but water and black coffee. She started leaving her front door unlocked. A part of her had stopped protecting herself because the worst had already happened. Day 23. Police reviewed Doug's cell data again. No calls since day 14. No purchases, no pings. But Serena thought differently. Don't look for usage, she said. Look for absence. What do you mean? Mercer asked. I mean, look for where his phone should have pinged but didn't. No signal drop is ever completely clean. They reconstructed the cell tower paths. Doug's phone typically bounced through when traveling around town, and they noticed something subtle. On day 14 at 2:43 p.m., Doug's phone connected to a tower 11 miles east of town near the service road by Green Hollow Creek. Then nothing. For the next 4 hours, his phone was completely dark, but his gas card was used at 7:17 p.m., 20 miles southwest by the old off-ramp gas mart. That's not possible, Miguel said. No towers in between. He went off-grid somehow. They visited Green Hollow and found something strange. A set of fresh tire ruts older than a week. Newer than a month, carved through the grass near the back of a broken-down hunting shack. But no trailer, no vehicle, no trace. They couldn't be sure it was related, but it didn't feel like coincidence. Rachel received another knock on her door the next morning, but not from police. It was an elderly neighbor named Judith, who lived 3 doors down. She was holding a stack of old photos. I was going through these, she said softly. From that street cookout we had 2 summers ago. Rachel blinked. Okay. I saw something in one of them and thought you might want to have it. Judith handed over a glossy 4x6 photo. Rachel's hands tightened. It was Maddie, 11 years old, laughing while holding a sparkler. But it wasn't her face that caught Rachel. It was Doug in the background, looking at someone, not Maddie, but a woman Rachel didn't recognize. Someone far younger, with bleached hair, standing too close, a paper plate in hand. Who's that? Rachel asked. Judith frowned. Oh, she was with Doug. I thought she was a niece or something. Rachel felt the heat drain from her face. Doug never mentioned her, not once. She took the photo to Mercer that afternoon. The team ran the woman's face through facial recognition. 2 hours later, they had a match. The woman's name was Clarice Dayton, 29, No local address, last known residence in Amarillo, Texas. A background check revealed she had 3 aliases, no employment record for 5 years, but one known traffic citation for driving a stolen trailer in 2019 near Oklahoma City. This was something newer, new name, a new path, no bracelet, no random tips, just real patterns, the kind people miss until they're desperate enough to look sideways. Mercer pulled the team in tighter. Let's get everything we can on her. If we find her, we might find Doug. And Maddie, Jules asked. Mercer didn't answer because that part still lived in the silence. Day 25 began with a sharp change in air pressure. A windstorm had rolled through the night before, knocking out power lines in the western edge of Walnut Ridge. The weather shifted, but inside the Carter house, nothing changed. Time still felt slow. The clocks ticked, but they didn't move. Rachel woke up at 5:12 a.m. from a nightmare where Maddie was calling her name, but standing behind glass, banging unheard. She sat up, drenched in sweat, convinced for a few seconds that something had actually happened, that maybe her daughter had been outside knocking, that maybe she'd missed it. But when she reached the door, the porch was empty still. Like always, Detective Mercer's team had worked through the night. They'd started peeling back Clarice Dayton's life like an onion, each layer thinner than the one before. She had no job, no legal home, no registered vehicle, but she had movement. That much was clear from toll cams and scattered security. Pings that Serena and Miguel pulled from DMV and utility server logs. 3 weeks ago, 2 days before Maddie vanished, Clarice's face showed up briefly at a gas station camera near the state line. She was standing beside a white panel van, no logo, no plates, just a smudge of dirt where a license should have been. She hadn't bought anything. She just stood in frame, looking around, waiting for someone. Mercer forwarded the image to a contact in Texas who owed him a favor. Clarice had skipped out on an old probation check-in after a credit card fraud charge in 2018. She'd never resurfaced until now. The contact ran the image through a series of AI-enhanced facial indexing networks that monitored commercial CCTV footage. Nothing hit immediately until 3 hours later. Clarice was spotted in Amarillo 10 days earlier, same white van. This time, she was seen exiting a motel room, carrying 2 duffel bags and locking the door behind her. The motel had since purged its records, but Mercer's team made a visit. Inside the room, housekeeping recalled an odd smell they couldn't quite place, no signs of damage, just something off. Forensics found something in the carpet edge, a small trace of melted plastic, consistent with synthetic ID cards being laminated on a portable press, and in the sink drain, synthetic blonde hair extensions not Maddie's. But still strange. Mercer made a decision that afternoon. He didn't go to Rachel's house. He called her instead. "We found someone who may be involved," he said, voice cautious. "A woman who had contact with Doug some time ago." Rachel didn't respond right away. "What does that mean?" she finally asked. "It means we might have a direction. Is it good news?" Mercer hesitated. "It's something, and right now, something was better than nothing." Meanwhile, Serena kept digging. She started building a movement map of Clarice's last known 12 months, every possible traffic camera, public footage snippet, anonymous Wi-Fi ping, stolen credit, card swipe, motel registration, and grey market social media trace. It took her 14 hours. By the time she was done, a pattern had emerged. Clarice hadn't been drifting randomly. She had been moving in a loop, circling through the same 6 counties over and over, not just in this state, but others nearby. Each time for a few days. Each time staying in the same clusters. Roadside motels, abandoned lots, trailers, and then disappearing again. The loop didn't look like an escape, it looked like a route. Miguel pulled something else. Doug Carter's last known phone login before he vanished was near a cellular tower close to an old junkyard 50 miles west of Walnut Ridge. It wasn't much, but the date and time exactly 1 hour after Maddie was last seen. They sent a drone to check it from above. No sign of trailers, no vehicles parked illegally, just rusting metal and bent fencing. But in the back corner of the aerial shot, something strange caught Serena's attention. A small rectangle of scorched earth, partially covered by a sheet of black plastic and old tires. She zoomed in. Why cover dirt in the middle of a junkyard? Mercer called the county office and got access within 2 hours. By dusk, a search team arrived. They moved the tires, peeled back the plastic, dug 6 inches down. They didn't find a body. They didn't find Maddie. They found a wooden pallet, burned around the edges, resting on 2 concrete blocks, and beneath that, an empty steel case, with foam cutouts. The shape of the cuts, rectangular one about the size of a tablet, another larger, deeper, consistent with a long-barreled camera lens. It was a transport case for equipment surveillance, photography, or worse. Back at the station, Mercer stared at the box under the evidence lamp. Someone had used this site to store or transfer something, likely not just once, but there were no prints, no serial numbers. The foam was generic. The box had been scorched deliberately, probably with fuel. A bottle cap nearby matched a brand of lighter fluid sold only at 2 gas stations in the region. It wasn't much, but it narrowed the radius again. Clarice wasn't hiding, she was operating. That night, Rachel did something she hadn't done in years. She opened Doug's old photo albums, the ones they'd boxed up after the divorce. He'd taken most with him, but a few duplicates stayed behind. She stared at them, images of Doug, younger, smiling, holding Maddie when she was just a toddler. A photo of them at a pumpkin patch, a 4th of July cookout, a trip to the Riverall from back when life still felt like it was being written forward. One photo stood out, Doug leaning against a trailer knot, just any trailer, that trailer square-edged, same roof seam, same rust pattern below the door hinge. She flipped the photo over, handwriting in blue ink, Spring 2019, outside Odessa. She picked up her phone and called Mercer. The next morning, police traced the trailer's VIN number from vehicle records Doug had once listed as part of a worksite gig transporting tools and car parts. It had never been sold, never officially registered. It had been stored in a facility outside of Odessa. They called the storage company. The trailer had been moved 2 weeks ago by someone, using a fake ID, Clarissa D. Wilson. It was enough for the feds to get involved. Now, the case had crossed jurisdictions, and what began as a missing person file in a quiet Ohio town was part of something much bigger. But none of that mattered to Rachel. All she cared about was one thing: where is my daughter? And no one could answer that yet, not until they found that trailer. Not until they found him. By day 29, Rachel no longer counted the days on the calendar. She counted them in things that had changed. Her front porch light had gone out. The food in the fridge had spoiled. The flyers she'd printed weeks ago were weather-creased and curled at the corners. Neighbors who once knocked now only waved from the sidewalk cautiously, like they were afraid grief might be contagious. Rachel wasn't angry, she understood. People were built to move on, but she wasn't, because Maddie hadn't. And until that changed, Nothing else would. Detective Mercer and his team weren't moving on either. With the trailer now tied to both Doug and Clarice, the investigation entered federal territory. Homeland Security's Human Trafficking Unit had quietly been briefed, and a cross-border watch alert was activated. Still, there was no proof of a crime beyond disappearance. And that's what made it harder. They weren't chasing a killer. They were chasing ghosts. Serena dug deeper into Doug's movements in the months leading up to Maddie's vanishing. He had no criminal record, no flagged financial activity, but something about his spending pattern stood out to Miguel. It's not what he spent, he said. It's what he stopped spending on. Doug had a predictable routine: utilities, online gaming purchases, the occasional gas station charge. But 60 days before Maddie vanished, his credit card use dropped by 80%, almost like he'd pulled back, gone casually. Either he's broke, Miguel said, or he started living differently. They checked bank withdrawals. Doug had pulled out $9,400 in cash over 11 weeks, small amounts, different ATMs, different towns. He'd been covering his trail, and whatever he was funding, it wasn't groceries. At the same time, Serena tracked Clarice Dayton's movement to a motel near Gallup, New Mexico, 3 days before Maddie went missing. She had checked in under the name Lana Thomas. The room was rented for one night and paid in cash, but the motel had something useful. An old employee, Josh, who remembered the name. She had a red hoodie, I think, he recalled. Kind of twitchy, didn't say much, but there was something weird. What do you mean? She asked if the backlot had privacy, like if anyone used the dumpsters or hung out back there. He showed them the location: a gravel patch behind the motel with a broken gate and rusted trash bins. Mercer walked back there himself. It didn't lead anywhere, no connecting roads, just a wall, a fence, and a long stretch of nothing. But the next morning, when Serena reviewed footage from a pawn shop across the street, she caught something in the background: a white trailer. Stopped there for exactly 18 minutes. The license plate was blocked. The driver's window was down, but the figure inside was shaded by the awning overhead. Still, this was something, a confirmed location. The team called in ground units from New Mexico to search the site with cadaver dogs and luminol. They weren't expecting a body, but they were looking for residue, chemical traces, tire grooves, loose hairs, clothing fibers, anything. The results came back 36 hours later. Nothing, not even a footprint. It was starting to feel deliberate, like someone had practiced this before. Mercer turned back to Rachel. Not because he had answers, but because he needed more pieces, something only a mother would notice. I want to go through Maddie's school stuff, he said. Rachel hesitated, then led him to the room. It still looked untouched, as if Maddie might walk back in any moment and flop onto her bed like nothing had happened. Mercer sat by her desk while Rachel stood in the doorway. He opened notebooks, flipped pages, looked at sketches. One caught his eye, dated 11 days before she vanished. A drawing of a girl with a ponytail, Maddie, almost certainly standing next to a bike trailer. Beside her, a man, but it wasn't clear if it was Doug. The figure was taller than usual, wearing a cap, and his face was just a shaded oval. "What's this?" he asked. Rachel leaned in. She liked sketching things that stood out to her, sometimes from memory, sometimes from dreams. "Do you recognize that location?" Rachel squinted. The background was vague: a fence, maybe a row of vertical lines like tree trunks, a street lamp. Nothing distinctive, but one detail popped: the man's hand. It was reaching for the trailer door latch knot on the outside, from the inside. Mercer took a photo. He didn't say anything aloud, but in his gut, something stirred. It wasn't proof, but it was a message. Maybe Maddie had seen something she wasn't supposed to. The following morning, an anonymous call came into the tip line, a woman's voice, shaky, distorted by software. She was with him near mile marker 12. I saw them. Click. The call ended. Police traced the signal. It bounced from a digital mask routed through 3 servers in Canada. No luck. They dispatched a search unit to mile marker 12, but there were dozens of highways in the region with a mile 12. The only nearby one was along Route 6, just west of a forestry maintenance path. Officers searched the stretch for 3 hours before a trooper noticed something strange. An old utility keybox embedded in the side of a hill. It didn't belong to the state. It had no power, but it was open. Inside, taped to the back wall, was a plastic pouch, dry and heat-sealed. They called it in. Inside the pouch, a crumpled envelope. And inside the envelope, nothing, just a faded photograph of a wooded path taken from behind a wire fence. No person, no name, no writing. But in the bottom corner, barely visible in the edge of frame, was something red, not clothing, a plastic tag, the kind you might find on a rental trailer's hitch. Miguel examined it with AI filters. The serial was partially burned out, but the logo in the reflection was faintly visible. Swift West Rentals, Nevada region. Mercer's jaw clenched. Doug had once traveled through Nevada for a warehouse job. They checked the company. No active rentals under Doug Carter's name, but they had a lost record. One trailer never returned. The address it was sent to, a P.O. box used by a woman named Tara Lee, an alias Clarice Dayton had used in 2021. The net was closing, but Maddie still hadn't been seen, and Doug hadn't surfaced. Rachel was called in to review the trailer models. None looked familiar. None triggered anything, but then she paused at one interior photo. A beige interior, fold-out bench, blue carpet. "I've seen this," she whispered. "Where?" Doug had one just like it years ago. Used to say the carpet made it feel like a real bedroom. "You sure? I vacuumed it once." Her eyes were locked on it. "I remember that exact stain." That was enough. Federal agents were looped back in. The trailer was real. Its make and model matched the one seen in the original WhatsApp video. And now they had a serial code. The hunt could begin in earnest. Day 33. Rachel sat alone again. She looked out the window, still no message, still no ransom, still no goodbye. But this time, her breath was steadier, because now they were closing in. She could feel it. Somewhere, something was about to break. She just prayed it would happen before it was too late. Day 34 began before sunrise. The sky over Walnut Ridge was still the color of steel wool, dense with the kind of quiet that carries weight. By 6 a.m., 2 unmarked black SUVs rolled out of a secure federal field office 80 miles south, carrying 4 agents from Homeland Security and 1 exhausted local detective who hadn't slept properly in 3 days. Detective Mercer rode in, the passenger seat, flipping through the printed details of the trailer, now officially linked to Clarice Dayton and Doug Carter. The model was a 2004 Swift West Horizon, beige interior, blue carpeting, stained near the rear vent. Registered under a fake company name, LTN Logistics. Now revealed to be a front for multiple rentals tied to movement across state lines with No clear cargo manifests. This wasn't just a missing girl anymore, this was organized. And Maddie might be caught in the middle of something far bigger than anyone had feared. The break had come late. The previous night, a cross-check on trailer rental databases revealed that a Swift West Horizon had pinged a license plate recognition camera just outside Flagstaff, Arizona, 3 days ago. The catch: the plate was forged, but the shape, dimensions, and light reflection matched the missing trailer perfectly. More importantly, the vehicle towing it was a grey Ford F-150 partial plate 3NX. Doug's known vehicle, which had not been seen since day 14, had a matching partial. They were close now. The agents didn't discuss it out loud, but Mercer could feel the shift in their tone, their pace. This wasn't speculative anymore, they were on an intercept course. And yet, none of them dared speak about Maddie directly because they didn't know what they would find. And because too many times, what was found wasn't what anyone hoped. Back in Walnut Ridge, Rachel sat with her coffee gone cold, staring at the same photo frame for the 6th day in a row. It was the one of Maddie at age 9, holding up a ribbon. She'd won for a library reading challenge. Her hair had been tied in a knot, so high on her head it tilted like a tower. She'd refused to fix it because she said it made her look taller. That was Maddie Starban, creative, and quietly brave in ways Rachel only appreciated in retrospect. She picked up the phone and called Mercer. It went straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message, she didn't need to. Something in her chest already told her they were doing something important. The task force had triangulated the last known direction of the trailer based on cell tower drops, highway traffic logs, and a final plate ping near an unincorporated stretch of desert west of Winslow. A local pilot had agreed to fly a drone along the dirt roads marked in public land maps. That's when they spotted it, half covered in a dust storm, parked behind a ridge, camouflaged by tarps and brusher. White trailer, no visible plate. The team approached on foot from 3 angles. There was no sign of anyone outside. No tire marks indicating recent movement, just hard earth. A dry breeze and wind-blown trash caught in nearby shrubs. One agent reached the door, it was locked. Another circled back, found a dented vent grate, and peeked through. Empty, no sound, no movement, no lights. They breached it. Inside was stale air and the scent of something metallic. The bench was there, the blue carpet, the same corner, stay no Maddie, no Doug, but it hadn't been empty long. A bag of trail mix sat half open. A pack of bottled water was missing too. Footprints in the thin layer of dust. 2 sets, one larger, one smaller, and a discarded sweatshirt. Rachel's eyes immediately identified it in the photo Mercer texted. Later, light grey with the sleeves torn. Maddie's. She wore it every weekend. It had faint marks near the cuff red, but not blood, paint, makeup. They bagged it. Outside the trailer, agents found fresh cigarette butts, 3 in total, stamped into a nearby stone. Brand, Sturgis Reed 100s, a rare type sold only in convenience stores in a few southwestern states. One had lipstick, residue female, likely Clarice. They'd been there recently. Inside the trailer's cabinet, taped behind the back wall panel, was something unexpected. A folded road map, old school, creased, and marked. One route had been traced in pink highlighter, winding west toward the California border. A side note scribbled in pen: read only, switch before line. No one knew what it meant, but it was something: a plan, a deadline, or both. They pulled every camera record within a 100-mile range of the spot. At 4:12 a.m. the morning before, a gas station camera near the I-40 interchange captured a grey truck towing a different trailer, not the Swift West. Shorter, a different make, but the driver, a man matching Doug Carter's profile, beard longer, hat pulled low, eyes down, and next to him, a woman wearing a red hoodie. No child was seen, but that didn't matter. They'd switched trailers, and they were heading west. By the time Mercer returned to Walnut Ridge, he'd been awake 38 hours. He didn't go home, he went straight to Rachel's. She opened the door before he knocked. "You found something?" she said flatly. He nodded. "Yes, but we're not there yet." Was she there? She'd been there. Rachel closed her eyes. For a second, she looked like she was about to fall. Then she held on to the doorframe and whispered, "Okay. Okay, what do you need from me?" Mercer paused. "I need to know what Doug was like when no one else was looking before the separation, before any of this." Rachel didn't ask why. She understood. She sat down and talked. She told him about Doug's moods, his unpredictability, his disappearances, for work gigs that never quite added up, his late nights with friends she never met. She spoke about how he was charming to everyone, the neighbors, Maddie's teachers, the cashier at the market, but cold in private. Not abusive, just unreachable, like he was always somewhere else, like he was holding a secret he never intended to tell. Back at the station, Serena and Miguel were preparing for the next phase. Serena had begun building a behavioral timeline using Doug's patterns when he moved. How far, how frequently he changed phone numbers, how long he stayed in one place. She added Clarice's profile into the same map. The overlaps were chilling. In 7 different locations over 18 months. Both had been within 10 miles of each other, always near state borders, always near bus depots or cargo yards, and always gone within 24 hours of arriving. It wasn't chance, they weren't just partners. They were on a schedule. By now, Clarice had 4 confirmed aliases. Doug had 2. Maddie was still unconfirmed. No sightings, no messages, no photos. The last known thing connected to her was a sweatshirt left on a trailer floor, still folded, still warm when agents picked it up. That meant something, they just didn't know what yet. Mercer stood in front of the evidence board late that night. The photos, the maps, the cross-state, pins, the timelines, so many lines. But one question still pulsed louder than the rest. Why? Why take Maddie? Why now? And what were they planning west of the border? He didn't say it aloud, but he felt it in his chest. Something was about to crack wide open. He just prayed they'd reach it before the story wrote its final page. The message came on the morning of day 35, encrypted, routed through a federal agency in Arizona. It read only, "Target active, suspected exchange point confirmed, 11 a.m. PST. That was it, no names, no context. But the agents on Mercer's task force didn't need more, they knew what it meant. Doug and Clarice were about to make a move at 10:12 a.m. 4 federal vehicles lined the perimeter of a dusty logistics warehouse 10 miles outside Calexico, California, just minutes from the Mexican border. From a distance, it looked like a forgotten depot. Sun-baked siding, faded signage, brush crawling up the fencing. But it wasn't abandoned, not today. There were 2 white cargo trailers parked side by side behind the building, no license plates, no visible drivers. The team moved fast, surrounding the property with plain-clothed agents positioned at exits and along the dirt road stretching east. Overhead, a drone hovered quietly. By 10:54 a.m., movement, A grey Ford F-150 approached slowly, pulling into the rear lot. Doug Carter stepped out, same build, same stance, different man. He was heavier now, unshaven, hollow-eyed, but there was no mistake. He walked to the rear of one trailer and knocked twice a code. The trailer door cracked, and that's when the team moved. Go. Two squads converged at once, one from behind the building, the other from the front gate. Tires skidded. Dust rose. Shouting echoed. Hands up now. Doug froze. The woman beside him, Clarice Dayton, tried to run but didn't get far. She was tackled within 20 feet of the gate. Inside the trailer, the agents found what they'd feared and hoped. 16 teenage girls packed into a compartment the size of a shipping container, barely ventilated, sitting silently on blankets. Some barefoot, some shaking, their faces blurred by dust, fear, and dehydration. One girl turned slowly toward the light pouring in from the door hair, matted eyes red, thin, but alive. Maddie Carter. She didn't answer right away. Then a weak nod. The agent radioed, "We have her." Back in Walnut Ridge, Rachel stood in the middle of her kitchen, holding the same mug of coffee she'd filled and refilled 100 times since Maddie disappeared. Her phone rang once, then again. She answered before the second ring ended. Rachel Mercer's voice cracked. "We found her." The mug fell from her hands and shattered across the tile. The reunion was quiet. Maddie was flown back under protection. She stepped off the plane slowly, escorted by 2 agents. She didn't run into Rachel's arms like in the movies. She didn't cry or shout. She just walked up, trembling, and whispered, "You kept calling my name." I heard it. Rachel folded her into a hug that neither of them let go of for a long time. The truth came out over the next few days in pieces, in transcripts, in long sessions with counselors and investigators. Doug had been working with a trafficking network that moved girls between states and eventually across borders, selling them to private brokers under the guise of employment, rehabilitation, or education programs. He hadn't just sold Maddie, he'd planned it for weeks. He knew her schedule, her friends. He knew she wouldn't resist him. He told her they were going to meet someone who could help him get a better job so she could have a better life. She believed him. He drove her to the trailer. She was inside it for 2 days before Clarice arrived. Then everything changed. The lights were kept dim. She wasn't allowed to speak. They moved her only at night. By the time she realized what was happening, she was too far from home to fight back. But she remembered one thing: the man at the ice cream shop. She'd noticed him filming. He hadn't looked like the others. She never saw him again, but she prayed he had sent it. She prayed someone was watching. Doug Carter was arrested and charged with 21 federal crimes, including human trafficking, child endangerment, interstate kidnapping, conspiracy, and obstruction. Clarice Dayton faced 17 charges across 3 states. Both were denied bail. At his first hearing, Doug didn't speak. He never once looked in Rachel's direction. Maddie didn't attend, she didn't need to. He was out of her life forever. The remaining girls rescued from the trailer were placed in protective care, each beginning the long road back to something resembling safety. Some had been missing for months. One had been gone for nearly 2 years. Maddie was the only one whose name had made national headlines. But now all 16 stories would be heard because of her. In an interview with a trauma counselor weeks later, Maddie was asked what she remembered most. The air, she said. It stopped smelling like outside. It smelled like fear. The counselor nodded gently. And what helped you hold on? Maddie looked away, then smiled just faintly. I kept drawing in my head. I'd close my eyes and imagine sketching. I drew. A window, then a tree, then a bike, then the ice cream place. I kept drawing the man with the phone because I knew he was real. I knew someone had to be watching. Rachel didn't tell the world what it felt like to get her daughter back. She didn't need to. She just sat with Maddie at the kitchen table. Every morning, sometimes in silence, sometimes with coffee and toast, sometimes with Maddie scribbling nonsense shapes in her old notebook. Whatever it looked like, it was home again. And that was enough. Thank you for WATCHHING to this gripping story on the narrative nest. Stay tuned for more tales that uncover the truths hidden in the shadows.